this meeting of the Kingston Planning Board to order. It's February 1st, 2022, and we have with us tonight, from my left, board members Peter Coffin, Lynn Merrill, who's also Vice Chair, Richard Wilson is our Selectmen's Rep, Glenn Koppelman, I'm the Chair. To my right, Alan Faulkner, our Administrative Assistant and also an alternate to the board. Further down, Robin Duguay, board member, and then Chris Bashaw and Peter Bakey, board members, and sliding in to third is, or to home, is Glenn Greenwood, our planner, town planner. And Glenn, there's a note there for you to be dealt with. So Glenn, we have some folks from Brentwood here, but I don't believe that they're the folks making the presentation or leading the discussion. So do you know when they will be arriving?
They're going to be here at 6:45.
Great, thank you. So we'll get started with business. We don't have any public hearings tonight. We do have a discussion with the Brentwood Economic Development Committee, and that's the first thing that we'll do. And then we also have our hydrogeologic consultant, Dana Truslow, coming to discuss with us the update of the aquifer maps that we had contracted with her to do. So, and she, I believe, is scheduled for 7:30.
7:30.
People want their nameplates.
Oh, you guys want your nameplates? Here, sure. We'll
Peter, Robin, Peter Carter, me, you.
My agent.
And I don't know if you. Oh, he's got.
Oh, yeah.
Do you travel with that?
Richard passed it down to me. He's way ahead of you guys.
Richard, everyone knows who you are, so
Everybody knows my name.
You don't.
Thanks, Norm.
Okay, let's. Before we start the Brentwood discussion, let's try to get a couple of correspondence items out of the way. We have, first item is an invoice from our town engineer regarding a review, part of his review process for the latest plans, the most recent plans for Berkshire Dominion, the Saddle Up Saloon. And did it change its name?
No.
No, it's just that they have a different thing under their escrow account. It's under a different fund. So we have to put it on that so Cindy can find it.
Okay, because yeah, okay. So presumably there's enough in our escrow to cover it, Ellen?
Yes.
And the amount is $354.60. There's a second one. Well, actually, it says, Ellen, that there are two invoices, but I only see one. Those, no?
No, it's two for this one.
Two.
So T-TAD had two invoices.
Oh, got it. All right, and two invoices for the project at Diamond Oaks, the commercial condominiums. And let's see, one from December 16, one from January 24, also from town engineer, and for work that he did reviewing plans and providing guidance to the board on those two occasions. One for $380, that's the one from December 16. And one from January 24 for $213.75. Does anyone have questions on any of these while I open? Oop, sorry, scratched off something before I got to. Next item is, there's no action on this, but it's a report from Rockingham County Conservation District on test pits that they witnessed on behalf of the town for Summit Distributing LLC at 249 Route 125, tax map R40, lot 15. And this was, the work was done and reported on by Michael Cuomo, New Hampshire soil scientist, who works for Rockingham County Conservation District. So this is just an FYI. And this project hasn't come to us yet. It did come to us for design review a year or two ago. Did it not, Glenn?
Yeah, long time.
Long time ago, a couple of years ago. Pre-pandemic. Pre-pandemic.
So if we started a new file on them, should that go in the new file?
Oh, it will. It will. And in the meantime, they've been solidifying their plans, and they're currently before ZBA for the special exception because of the Aquifer Protection
And
District.
that's Thursday night, right?
Actually, I saw two agendas for them. One for Thursday and one for a future day. There were two.
One last
Peter
Thursday.
Last Thursday and then next Thursday.
To hear an appeal for the rehearing. And, an appeal against the rehearing. And then one for next, the second Thursday of the month, whatever that is. It'll be the rehearing.
So the appeal,
So the appeal was denied for to cancel the rehearing on this, because there was no, basically on advice of town council, so that was over the line. In fact, so it's that's January. February the 10th is the rehearing date.
Okay. So presumably at some point we'll be seeing them for a formal application, but right now they're with ZBA. Okay, the next item is a letter from King's Landing, which is an age-restricted development on Marshall Road. And this is their annual report on age census, which is one of the requirements in our ordinance for this type of development, and it's dated January 25. And it reads, I'm writing to the Town of Kingston Planning Board to comply with the requirements of Article 208.05, market rate elderly housing. I declare that as of December 31, 2021, 44 homes were occupied at King's Landing Condominium Association, 22 Marshall Road in Kingston. All occupants have provided a signed affidavit and photo identification which verifies they are at least 55 years of age. Please let me know if you require further documentation. Best regards, Sandra Licciardo, Treasurer, King's Landing Condo Association, and it has her address, phone number, and email address. So we'll put that into their file and thank them for continuing to do the report to us. Next one is an email from the chair of the Historic District Commission. Well, let me ask before we go any further. Are your folks all here now?
Yes.
You are. Okay. Let's put correspondence then away for now and ask that the folks from Brentwood who are going to be leading the discussion, I mean, you can all gather around, but we'll at least need the ones who will be speaking up here at the table close to the mic. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely, thank you for coming. Now there's one mic. Would both of you speak one at a time, and I want to make sure Adam is capturing your voice okay? Maybe we start by having you introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Bob Rossman. ROSSMAN. I'm a resident of Brentwood. I am Senior Director of Site Acquisitions for a national childcare company, Primrose Schools.
My name is Patrick Farrell, F-A-R-R-E-L-L. I'm also a resident of Brentwood. I am the Vice Chair of the Brentwood Economic Development Committee and also President of Site Public Relations.
Great, thank you. And Adam's giving us the thumbs up so he can hear you fine. Good. So, I don't know if we share a town planner. We have that in common. We also share a stretch of Route 125. We have that in common, and a town boundary. Glenn, since they're here through your interaction with them, I don't know if you wanted to give any introduction, or would you rather we just go right into the...
Just by way of introduction, the town established an economic development committee the end of last year, was it the November timeframe or so? And they've posted a survey online that solicited ideas and comments from Brentwood residents about potential paths of economic development for the town. And I think that they understand those very connections that you were just making about sharing 125. So it seemed like with the energy that they're generating over there, it would be good for the two towns to understand what's going on.
Great, great. Thanks, Glenn. I think before you walked in, I had done a full introduction of the board and who's here. Do you want us to redo that for you, just so you know who's...
Sure.
So why don't we'll introduce ourselves. Peter, we'll start with you.
Peter Coffin.
Lynn Merrill.
Richard Wilson.
Glenn Koppelman.
Ellen Faulkner, Administrative Assistant and Alternate.
Robin DeGray.
Chris Basham.
Peter Bailey.
You know, Lenway.
Okay, the floor is yours.
So just a little introduction. The reason we kind of started this process, I saw the property that was available on Route 125 on the corner of
South Road.
South Road. I saw the listing on there and called Lynn and said, you know, this is a great piece of property in this corner of Route 125, and you know, just curious what was happening with it. And then the more we got to talk, we're thinking, you know, we created this development committee in town in Brentwood, and it would be great if two towns would work together and try to come up with you know, or at least share information as to what we're doing, what the folks are doing along this corridor, because it obviously mutually benefits us. So Patrick and I had to come in and general conversation about, you know, things that are happening in Kingston, things that are happening in Brentwood, and it led us to the idea of having a sit down with the board just to kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing.
Great, excellent.
Yeah, sure. So as the gentleman said, you know, we have put together a survey that we've gotten approximately 140 responses for that. And based on that, we are taking the survey data in order to formulate a plan. And basically, with the idea of really keeping Brentwood rural, and also taking advantage of our commercially zoned areas such as 125.
Could you stop there and maybe just enlighten us as to what specifically is zoned commercial at this point?
Specifically, it is 125 Pine Road.
All of Pine Road, or
Pine Road, yeah.
all of it?
Well, really about 3/4.
About 3 acres.
Okay,
The northern 3/4.
And 27
okay.
portions around the track.
So with regard to 125, is it what fronts on 125, or does it go back beyond the lots that front?
It does go back, but varying degrees up and down the corridor. So that's one thing we're looking at to see, you know, what can be done with looking at our commercial zoning. There's a lot of wetlands in our town, up and down 125. So we're constrained by that, and obviously we're constrained by not having sewer.
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I was just curious that if we could at least get to that baseline, that might be a good starting point. So I'll turn it back to you.
So through various small questions, we have found out that most residents see 125 in Brentwood as not that big of an asset, because of the lack of, things there. So with that said, 80% found that had the biggest opportunity, which obviously brings us to you since we share that in common. So as Bob had said, we want to introduce ourselves and possibly share ideas, share information, because whatever it is we do and you do is going to impact that full section. So I figured might as well speak face to face and get to know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you want to add anything to what you were sort of starting to go toward?
Sure. As Glenn mentioned earlier, we put together an economic development team, which I guess was the result of a meeting with the Board of Selectmen. They approved putting this board together. So we have a variety of folks on our board. We've got an engineer, a data scientist, an attorney, real estate expert. We've got someone from the town of Exeter, Darren Wyndham, who's on our board as well. He's familiar with economic development. Let's see if I miss anybody. We've got some members from the planning board, and also I think those are primary members.
So Darren is a member of your committee?
Darren is a member of the committee. He meets with our committee meets every 2 weeks, and he is a part of the committee.
And then consult an advisory role.
So at this point, we've done some survey gathering. We've come up with a website. It's done, not 100% done, but it's up and it's live. I think it's bringing.gov.com. And we're going to be putting some signage on 125 to try to attract some businesses on 125. So we're starting to roll out, and take action on some of the ideas that we have. We have a ways to go to try to figure out exactly what we'd like to do and how we'd like to accomplish it.
We've also secured 2 interns from UNH, business school, right?
Yeah.
Business school, so they'll be helping us out and doing some of the research and whatnot in order to really formulate the plan.
Could you talk a little bit more about the survey that you did? You said you had 140 responses. I mean, did it go out, electronically or by paper? Did it go to every resident and every business? How did that work?
Yeah, so how it worked is, it was an online survey, and we did have paper versions in the library, in town hall, and whatnot, so in case for those that didn't have access to it. We did have a QR code, so they could directly go to, I figured, most are common and familiar with that process now, and QR codes and menus and whatnot. The results really were, they're still coming in, still collecting them, but generally positive towards 76%, I believe, was entertainment or some type of restaurant or whatnot. Is that what they're interested in? But with that said, there is definitely a sway towards agricultural as well, and farming and whatnot. So really, as I said earlier, our goal is to really control the growth of Brentwood. It's inevitable. Change is happening. It's a matter of how you control it.
It's coming from both ends.
It's coming from both ends.
Yeah.
How do you control it?
Right.
And that's what our goal is. While we want to stay true to who we are, be rule, and stay rule, we want to be able to control the outskirts that we can control. And obviously, by working with you, you share that outskirts.
And so we haven't gotten to this phase yet of identifying where the opportunities are and looking at the parcels of land that might be available. I think one of our goals is to try to identify specific industries and opportunities that we can put on this corridor to, help bring the things that aren't here necessarily. You folks have some pretty big developments coming in town, and that's going to spur some additional investment in some services that are going to be needed. So, great information for us to know about, so that we can, help drive some of that as well.
Well, we're certainly happy either from this board or through Glenn to share with you, anything that's currently happening, especially close to the border, if you're not already aware of it. Plus, any commercial zoning that we currently have in place. I mean, it's all available, it's all public information, but we're certainly happy to discuss it and share it. We as a town created 3 commercial zones, and this goes back to
2004.
I was going to say the 90s.
2004 was when they were changed.
Enacted. Okay, it's when they were voted. Okay. So it's been a while, and it's taken quite a while for us to see much in the way of action from them. We're starting to finally, but there's the part that comes up through the southern part of 125. The commercial zones, by the way, all front or are associated with 125 for us. The southern part, which is commercial zone 3, comes up from the Plasto line up to where the bypass of Route 125 starts. And then a little bit further up, it's commercial zone 1, down by
Depot Road.
Which is one of the fully signalized intersections along the bypass. And then up close to up to the Brentwood line, the northern part is commercial zone 2, which is where most of the activity is currently taking place. It's where the distribution center was recently approved, and there's also a fairly large retail development that's in the works, although we haven't seen it here at the board level yet. So, well, I don't want to be talking all the time.
You had mentioned,
Questions or discussion from the
you had
board?
mentioned that people wanted some sort of an agricultural growth on 125. How would they?
No, I think what it was is, well, that's part of what we are exploring. So we wanted to find out, what was important to them, what would they like
Yeah.
to see. So whether that was like farming or something like that. So really, it all depends on what opportunities we have come across. But it's just a matter of, we know what to go after. Does that answer your question?
So is it your desire to try to attract certain, based on what you hear back from residents, is what you would try to then attract, whether it be, office type businesses or industrial type uses or commercial agricultural uses or?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And in the end, we want to give our residents what they want. So,
Does the current zoning stipulate certain types of business activity that's currently permitted?
Commercial industrial zone is pretty open-ended.
Okay.
It allows a pretty wide swath of things, and one of the reasons that it makes sense for the two towns to be aware of what each is doing is we're very similar. Neither of us have water or sewer, so we're talking about development ideas that require on-site septic and water, and it's really limiting because we happen to be right along that dividing line in the county where there's a lot of wetlands. And so it might, one of the things we might want to consider is some sort of outreach to property owners about the benefits of larger community septic systems, thinking away from just the single serving sort of septic system. There are technologies out there that they don't mirror real wastewater treatment facilities, but they certainly allow for greater opportunity. The town of Brentwood has, on a couple of occasions, with fits and starts, talked with Epic about extending their municipal water line down 125 to some degree, because, if you can remove one of those features, the on-site well, that frees up more land in areas that are, constrained by wetlands. So the less setback area taken away, the more development potential, so that's been something that the town has considered. We're oddly situated to have a huge water resource that we've thought about doing something with, but it's never been channeled in any real straightforward way. But we have an incredible resource here in Kingston.
Now, that resource goes over the line. I mean,
Yeah,
That was my question to ask about their aquifer.
They have some good resource too. Their resource on 125 isn't as great as the resource we have on Pine Road. We have a groundwater resource on Pine Road that is extraordinary for,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
The aquifer that is the groundwater resource on the 125 side isn't as rich as the 125.
So the one on Pine Road, does it mirror or rival some of the higher quality ones that we have?
Yeah,
It does.
yeah.
I think what always seemed strange to me, looking in the other side of Kingston, was that we had that tremendous resource in South Kingston, and yet Plasto took advantage of the federal funding, so they're now getting their water from Manchester.
Right.
Way away.
To me, it just didn't make any sense at all. It would have been far less expensive for them to have gone just over the line into Kingston and piped it from Kingston rather than piping it all the way from Manchester through Manchester to Salem to Hampstead to Atkinson to Plasto. It just didn't make sense.
I think it's always just a very delicate balance, because people come to us individually all the time, and I hear about, well, we want businesses, but we don't want to look like plastic, and we don't want to look like Epic. And I think one of the prohibiting factors, which pushes a lot of that away, is the fact that we don't have water and sewer in the town, because it pushes a lot of those projects away. And having previously owned a home in Portsmouth where the water and sewer and septic costs were astronomical, I watched them go up 700% over like 5 years. It's, from the constituents that I hear from, yeah, they want to promote some type of business and growth, but they still want to maintain that rural character. They like the large lot requirements. They don't want to be entertaining. From what I've seen, they don't want large apartment complexes and all these other things, because while there may be some tax impact at first to help that, but from my professional side of it, is the more population you have, the more businesses you have, you're going to need more police, fire, and EMS services. So I've never actually seen a tax savings realized from bringing some of that in, but I always try to tell people too that it's not necessarily, this board is bound by what's legally allowed in zoning. So what you vote on as a town for what you want to allow in specific zoning is really more important than the people making the decisions on something that's already enacted, because there's only certain things where our personal opinions come into play.
I understand that the sewer and the water has a lot to do with decisions on businesses coming to town. However, look at Stratham. From Portsmouth Avenue all the way up to Franklin Lane, private sewers, private wells. Three of the major wells that Exeter draws water from are in Stratham. Northampton is in Stratham. They all draw from Stratham. But yet we don't have public water. Or they don't have public water, I'm sorry, or sewer. But that shows you see the restaurant with the 110 over there. They got multiple places, Planet Fitnesses, generating money that they're all in private systems. So I think it's possible.
Oh, it's doable.
It's just, I hate to keep saying that, well, you can't come to town because you don't have public water or public sewer. So.
Yeah, it just makes it more challenging sometimes.
Correct.
Most of the time, especially for a business that's going to use a lot of water, like a restaurant or something. They have to have the right technology to do a system. They have to be willing to put the money into it, but it's doable.
We've always found that it's harder for the chain restaurants because they have certain criteria. They're not even looking at a place without water and sewer. They just won't even approach it. That's just number one of their criteria. But when you're talking about smaller restaurants and independents, it's a little easier to attract them because they understand. Many of them live with septic and water. private septic and water and understand what it's all about. So they're often easier to track than the chains. I mean, if you, even Aroma Joe's, even though they've looked at a piece of property here in Kingston and were willing to go forward with it without water and sewer for a long time, they were exclusively water and sewer. And only in various places will they be willing to not do that, but most of the time they do. So, and they're fairly local. But when you look at the bigger chains, they all want to be on water and sewer.
I mean, there are a lot of reasons for that, but not the least of which is the fact that they have, their plans are set for certain structural elements and, you know, sizes and building layouts and utilities and blah, blah, blah. And again, anytime they want to deviate from that, it costs them money. They either have to do a different architectural plan or they have to do different utility plans, you know, hire different people to do new plans and do sewer, septic instead of hooking up to a sewer line. But as you said, Peter, it doesn't mean they can't do it. They just have to be motivated enough and want to do it, I guess.
Is the intersection of 111 and 125, do you guys have that zone like, I want to say like historic or downtown or something? Is there a different zoning in that area?
I mean, 111 is
111 or 120?
Lindy's?
Yeah, 111. Lindy's.
Yeah, that's zone, town center zoning.
Town center zone, that's that.
It's a small area.
It's Crawley Falls area.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right across from the fire.
Yep. Lindy's and
That's what I was trying to think of, town center zone.
We actually have a second part of our goal when we started this group was to also look at our town center, which we really don't have. So we have town center entity with Kingston. It's just you guys have an amazing town center here with the green and everything else. So we don't have anything like that. So part of our group, which we're thinking about that, what can we do to create a town center? We haven't really come up with any ideas yet. We haven't started with it. We're kind of focused on gathering data right now, looking at things, but that's also something that we're seriously going to be looking at to try to deal with that.
Have you had a charrette done?
So
A charrette? Because Kingston's had 2 of them done, and the most recent one was updating the first one, but they focused on the downtown area and ways of improving traffic flow and making it more walking in downtown and that sort of thing. And that all came out of a charrette we did through Plan New Hampshire? Yeah, Plan New Hampshire. And it was,
the first one was with UNH actually.
Right.
The second one was Planned Parenthood.
and it was great.
I have contacted them. We just have a general discussion to see what they're all about and what they do. And it's something that we'll address at a later time. But
It really helped give direction. It gave a lot of direction.
The planning board thought about it seriously when they were doing their town center zoning a decade ago, well, 15 years ago. And got right up to applying and then didn't go forward. And enough,
Well,
wasn't enough local support.
it's a commitment. It's a commitment of money. It's a commitment of people resources and time. You know, it's not an off the cuff kind of thing. It takes quite a bit of work and planning and commitment by the folks to. I was going to suggest if you haven't talked to Stratum already, I don't know, Peter, if you are still connected with Stratum in that way, but I mean, they're trying to create sort of a town center. They don't have one either, or they don't have much of one.
They actually had some very nice plans at the town office. They were going to build a town center.
Yes.
They went from Bunk Hill Avenue over through the old Friend property over to by the fire department. They have already started the sidewalks downtown, the streetlights. You've noticed that they've
They've
added
got
all that.
signage, they got banners and
Oh
everything.
yeah, they do all kinds of stuff. So they actually have a plan on file on building a downtown in Stroud.
And I don't know if they've done a charrette or not, but I mean, it might be it's another town that you might want to make a connection with.
It's not like they had a similar vision that you have.
Right.
They've already put the work into it.
Right. I mean, you're right. I mean, you know, with having our historic district in the Plains, I mean, we're really blessed in that respect. Not every town has that, but you can.
Not every town has a post office.
True.
That's right.
Brentwood has had serious post office empty for the entire time that I've been there. Because it makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
And we were told outright no many years ago. It's always been a no.
Well, Newton could give them one of theirs. You can do it, you do it, you got it.
Newfields is lovely, and they have one, and they're a quarter of the size of the property.
Yeah, it's probably not gonna happen under the current postal system.
We've been told that it will never happen. But it's frustrating.
Well, I mean, given the current status of things at the federal level and with the post office in particular, it probably isn't gonna happen in our
There's a
lifetime.
big expanding atmosphere out there. I mean, the town honestly, maybe 20 years now ago, Peter Dow, who was really involved in Exeter, had a plan, you remember this, Bruce? To develop, was that the land property or?
Yes, it's up in the town center.
And it was right in the town center, and it was a good swath of land, and he had big ideas of having maybe expanded municipal facilities there.
Seems like there's a real power play between the Exeter post office and their service of many different towns. Manchester was some of the epics, so they bring it up, Brentwood did have 4 different postal zones within the town. Now we have them all, we have the Exeter zip, so everything's under, it says Brentwood, but then 03.
Do they at least provide a four-digit extension that's unique?
Well, everybody,
Brentwood?
people do it. We all have 4-digit extensions, and I don't know too many people probably use those.
Yeah.
But they're available.
But they're there, yeah.
It's available.
But one of the hardest things with them not having their own post office and their own zip code is GPS.
Right.
Because you often put in a Brentwood address, and then you find yourself in Exeter or Kensington. It's really an issue with that situation.
We get mail in Brentwood, those south roads, we get from people south road in Kensington, which is part of the Brentwood, part of the Exeter exchange. And then Exeter has, different streets that are similar to in Brentwood. But it seemed to me that was the biggest problem at the time, was the best we had prior, is that, Exeter didn't want to lose their share of the business. Manchester people didn't want to lose their share. And, certainly would be nice, but just how, it's probably worth exploring again. It's been 15, 20
It's been,
years.
but it has been so, the responses have been so adamant. The times that I'm aware that the town has asked that question. It is just one thing, but it's a huge community thing. And, we're a good sized community to be pigeonholed with someone else.
But I mean, overall, I think it's great to have the open discussions about what each other's town's doing. Just the one thing I would caution is that while we can say, there are some things that I would personally love to see, but I would always be cautious about, is it necessarily the town's job to make it so restrictive that it would only allow those things, because then you're really limiting the resource of whoever the landowner is or the property owner. I don't think it's our job to make it so restrictive. We have to have it conform to the wants and needs of the town, but we can't pigeonhole it so much that it only allows for the one ideal thing that we want that really eliminates any other opportunities for that landowner.
I can say that one of the biggest challenges we've had selling real estate in Brentwood for commercial use is the fact that your commercial zone does not cover an entire piece of property. Sometimes it's split down the middle with residential on one side and commercial on the other, and that does make it difficult. It would be far better if you did something that Kingston did, both with a historic district and with Route 125 commercial districts, and that's extend the district to the length of the property. So instead of having 1,000 feet back from 125, which I think Kingston did at one time, they now go at least to the boundary of the property that runs along 125.
Yeah, so one of the next parts of the process, we're going to put together a map with all the zoning, do an overlay with wetlands, do an overlay with the town line is, kind of look at all that stuff together and figure out how to adjust it. Or at least make suggestions on how to adjust it. That process is in place.
You mentioned one of the things you're planning on doing is putting some signage up, indicating that presumably Brentwood is welcoming, business activity and so forth. Are you going to be doing that before you've decided what kind of activity you'd like to attract?
Yes. That sounds really good.
That's already been
It's
painted.
big and it's going,
Okay.
It's honestly, for anybody who's been around for a long time, it existed for about 15 years.
yeah.
Right at the corner, it was there. It happened at the end of the 80s and made it through midway through the 90s as
So it's being refreshed.
being refreshed. Being refreshed.
Yes. We should probably have you come up closer to the table so the mic captures you. If you could just give us your name.
It's Kristen Aldridge. I'm a member of the planning board and the planning board representative on the economic development committee. And I just wanted to respond first to what you said about being cautious in landlord rights and everything. I think the idea is to be proactive and rather than waiting to see, what comes and who wants to develop them, go out and look for things that are consistent with what people are telling us they'd like to see. So, agribusiness kind of recoup rather than wait and see. I had a question for you too, and this is probably something you can ask Glenn anytime, but if there is any information that you can share from recent developments where there's been a traffic study or anything that you think would be useful for us to know, data that maybe is more up to date.
Yeah, I mean, Glenn or Ellen have all of that information. The planning board office is right on the other side of that wall.
And for instance, we do have the traffic study that was generated for the 785,000 square foot building that was approved, conditionally approved last year. We have that information. Happy to share. I believe we even have it electronic.
And one of the things that's going to come from that development is a redesign and a fully signalized intersection where Marshall Road comes into Route 125, because that there was enough traffic generated that it threw it over the threshold, and that was one of the conditions, I believe. There were 32 conditions, I think, and that's one of them.
Been one of the reasons that that permit still doesn't come through.
Right, but you will be seeing that, which is going to help with the control of traffic. It is pretty close to the Brentwood line; it's right there. So, and it will also capture the development of the parcel on the other side of 125, which is where the retail development that I mentioned earlier, that's currently with CBA. That's where they would be accessing Route 125, would be at that signalized intersection. So.
And also RPC, the traffic planners there have been talking with DOT about a long overdue study pretty much from the Kingston Brentwood line north. That section got passed over a number of years back when they did the study up through Kingston for the projects we had. And so that's coming up. It should be coming up fairly soon. So I would have your representative to RPC's get with Dave Walker and ask about that traffic survey.
That comes up a lot, the intersection.
Yeah, south.
I know that I need to put a plug in for the Planning Commission because you folks have been without a representative to the commission for a very long time, ever since the passing of Mr. Kennedy, I believe. So it's, if you have any interest at all, I mean, the Planning Commission would really like to have representation on the commission from Brentwood. So.
And they can help you a lot on this particular thing, more than we can probably.
Anyway, other thoughts? Mr. Selectman?
No?
Did the other two gentlemen, anything you'd like to add to the conversation? And if you do, I'm going to ask you to come forward.
Just say that members of the planning board just heard from our residents for as long as I've been here, 47 years.
You're Mr. Stevens?
Yes. The interest has been in port development, or commercial development, to sort of hopefully offset some of the tax burden that the town faces like every town does. I think something's come out of this is that we've got to do some factual homework to determine what our real wetlands is. We are besieged by wetlands on both sides, both east and west of 125. So it's great that we've been looking for years for a group to get involved. This group is really energized and a lot of expertise in a lot of different fields. And Glenn has agreed at our last planning board meeting to work with us over the next couple of months to try to identify the soil impact of various soil types along that road. Because before we really go out and project and invite people and tell them what the benefits are to them, and we have to know to get our facts. It's something we learned in fourth grade. We have a problem to get your facts on paper first. And I think that's something that we all are aware of, that that's an issue. It's going to take some work, but many of these different aspects of it would be, but Glenn's agreed to help us. Of course, we've had a lot of high-intensity soil mapping done on various parcels in 125, so there is some foundation of work to do. But, it takes money to make money, and we may have to invest some money to, perhaps hire a soil scientist to look at some of the raw data that we have. It's been interesting to come, here. We've all in our surrounding towns heard about your big development on 125. Certainly interesting. That would be a lure, kind of anchor for hopefully for other businesses to co-locate.
Have you, as part of your background and work, have you had some at least general conversations with Department of Transportation about what potential work might need to be done to that part of the corridor as you introduce new activity?
Well, as part of those 10-year plans, they have a certain set schedule for doing that traffic counts. And I think we're kind of right between where you are or Epping, so we kind of know what that daily count is. And we were talking about the parcel one that you're not representing on the corner of South Road and 125, and projected school to go there. Had quite a bit of traffic flow, but it wasn't a requirement. DOT did not require a signalized intersection for that activity, but certainly for something larger. It would. We have two signalized intersections now, one on 11A and the other on North Road, which has greatly reduced the number of accidents. There's always a horrible.
That was long needed. Long needed.
And it happened outside the 10-year plan.
Of course.
Like it happened through the safety program and didn't go through that long-range plan at all.
Injury and death have a way of trumping plans.
But it takes several.
Well, yes, it does.
That's the bad thing.
Somebody important.
So our ordinance is not restricted as far as what that commercial activity that in the town. We're not really great proponents of used car lots like up here, that perhaps we are. That's really not our intention. But we know gentrification will kind of come from both ends of the spectrum of the town line. So what's there now is not necessarily obviously what's going to be here in the future. More innovative septic systems and spoken about there is some hope down the road.
Well, and the other thing is that, looking perhaps way down the road, if at some point in time there's municipal infrastructure running up and down 125, that then changes the whole prospect of land development.
If you build it, they would come. So we have had some preliminary discussions with that being is certainly interested in talking about water supply. The sewer, they're still kind of keeping that close to their vest in terms of what they feel the capacity is for septic. But even the water would be,
Even one of two would make a big difference.
Oh, yeah.
but I think that, obviously the town would have to agree to a bond of some sort to build that infrastructure first. And it would be costly a portion of different, landowners that would co-locate there. But for a small town like Brentwood, I think something in the probably $8 to $10 million range on value to keep that somewhat of a stuff.
But I'm sure that if you aren't already aware, Darren could certainly inform you that, the creation of a TIF district would be a way to help fund that.
We've talked about that.
Without impacting all of the taxpayers in town.
So that kind of goes back to the central issue. We need to get our facts over the first. What do we have? Do we have the land mass to support it's in its infancy, but these guys got a lot of juice, and, hoping that's going to.
Juice and energy is a good start.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Gentleman in the back, the one person who hasn't spoken, did you have anything to add?
No, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm not going to
Come, please come up to the mic.
The least favorite thing to do is what you just asked.
Well, good. We want you to be uncomfortable, so go ahead.
No, I appreciate you taking the time, listening. I'm also involved, well, I'm not really involved with the economic committee, but I sit in the sidelines and I'm on the planning board. And I find it interesting, Lynn's made a number of different comments which has helped the economic committee. And guidance is important, but townspeople really are interested, as you heard, about keeping our town rural, but they're not opposed to the growth of 125. You've done an excellent job in the town here, small shopping area, carriage town halls, really nice. I think that's sort of what we have in mind. And I say we, I'm not part of that committee, I just sit in the back. I'm just interested as a resident in the town as well. But no, I really don't have anything to say. If you let me sit here, I'm just going to keep talking.
And I'm sorry, your name was Doug?
Doug Finnegan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Any last comments from our folks
The
here?
only thing I want to say is the first people that stepped forward to buy that land on the corner of South Road wanted to put in, you guessed it, storage.
What are the odds?
Well,
Doesn't use a lot of water.
I'm gonna get into it.
No, but just saying, they're endless.
Yeah. Well, it's a very high demand thing, so.
If you build it, they will fill it.
All right. Anything else, gentlemen? That's all I have. Well,
Thank you.
well, we appreciate you coming out and, you know, being proactive about it and coming to talk with us. If there's anything we can do, anything to, you know, to talk with you about or share information, we're happy to do it. And as I said, we share a common planner, so, you know, there should be no reason why information can't get back and forth. And, you know, if at any point in time you want to come back and sit with us again, we're happy to do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a good night. Thank you. Rick, I neglected to ask if you had any comment, but I figured you would have put your hand up. Okay. Hi, Dana. Come on up.
Don't go there.
Sorry.
Don't go there.
That technology existed.
I have a pencil.
It's out there, like I own a screen and a protector, and I would be happy to bring it. It's wireless, like it's amazing.
I know.
I project off my garage door all the time, like it's
There you go.
Yeah, made it mine.
Do you serve food?
It would be easier for you. You wouldn't have to do the drive up.
perfect.
Yeah.
We're now seeking bids for a laser projector.
Well, that's a much fancier than what I have, but mine could be available as early.
It does the job.
Yeah. It has audio.
See, don't let perfect get in the way of possible.
Yes.
Watch moving.
You understand they were moving?
Actually,
But after 7 years of asking, I've given up.
Actually, I would prefer something other than a tape recorder first.
Okay, we're going to table that discussion.
We're going to leave 1980s technology.
We're coming into the new century here. So Dana Truslow is with us.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and so I guess what we're doing tonight is having you just brief us on the work that you did to update the aquifer maps, which we had contracted with you to do. And the board has seen those new maps, but we thought it would be helpful for you to give us some in-person narrative.
Sounds great. Well, what was it? Probably a little less than a year ago, I came and did a little update on just groundwater characteristics and water quality concerns that are out there, and just made it possible to have some conversation about some of the concerns that you have. And I think we got through a lot of topics, and one of the things that came up is, the Zone A and Zone B delineation of the aquifer that was done 2013, 2014, because of the scale of the map and the fact that it didn't have a lot of the text parcel information on it, it wasn't always that easy to determine where these various zones are. So after talking with several of you and Glenn, we came up with an approach that would allow you to see where the aquifer is on an updated version of the tax map on a large scale, this one here, or actually that's a small scale, and then on a larger scale, the smaller maps. So there were 6 or 7 developments that had happened since the last tax map update. The geographic information system that's available, the information that's available on a statewide basis, is updated semi-regularly. And what had happened was when I pulled up the original file onto the map, we were looking at it and determined that there were several subdivisions that weren't on there, so we were able to get copies of those projects, and most of them were pretty straightforward. One of them was a little more tricky, but in fact we got them all onto 2 sets of maps so that you now have all the updated parcels on there, unless there's been some subdivisions since we last did it. So it should be up to date. So what we have is the aquifer map. I'll just do my best to open this up here.
Helpful. Someone else help it up for you?
Yeah, probably, thanks. Probably, these are what would be helpful, but this will be fine. So anyway, the aquifer is mapped here in various colors of orange and yellow. The most transmissive, that is the zone that has the highest water value or potential for water use, is in orange. The darker yellow is not quite as high, but it's still substantial. And then the other gold zone is still an aquifer map, but it just doesn't have as high of a transmissivity or amount of available water as the other zones.
Which of these corresponds with Zone A and B?
Yeah.
Zone A is, if you follow my finger around here, and then.
Oh, I see it. I see
All the
it.
way back up here, so there's a dotted green line.
Right.
You may not be able to see.
Yeah, so when you get a closer look at that, and we can make this bolder if it would help, but basically it's this dashed green line. And that was something that came out of that 2013, 2014 work that I did with you, just to kind of get the zones a little more, or the building requirements a little more stringent in Zone A than the Zone B. So this map shows in the green dashed line the Zone A, and outside the green dashed line is the Zone B. So it should all be fairly easy to see. The one thing that isn't on here, and it's largely because of the scale of the map, but also because it would take a lot more time, effort, and money to put all the parcel numbers and the lot numbers on there. So there's not map and lot numbers on each one of them.
But the boundaries, the parcel boundaries are there.
Parcel boundaries are there.
Okay.
But if somebody said, map 41, lot 10, where is that? They would have to do a little more work to find that.
They have to then go to the tax maps and do a little.
So we can't take this and put it on our tax map?
Well, I mean, that's in event,
Because that,
without going to the company that makes these and have them do it, no. But, so this is the larger scale map, which gives you the big picture. But what we've done is take this and break it into a little bit smaller maps. And so this set of maps that we have here takes these and breaks it into 6 smaller maps. There is one part of Kingston that wasn't included in this just because there's no aquifer protection zone in the northeast corner. So there's only 6 maps. And as an example, what I have done is for the first map, and you have this in your packet too, the same information is on these maps, it's just that there's smaller chunks of the town on here. And this map 1 is the northwestern corner of Kingston. And I have put on here the tax map outlines, along with the tax map numbers, but not the lot numbers for each one of those tax maps. So it should be pretty easy to then go to,
Yeah.
the tax map.
Yeah. If the tax map outline and number is there, then it's easy to go to that section of the website and pull that up.
well, that's not necessarily true, because the problem I have, and I brought this up when you were here before, is that you go to the property card and it'll say aquifer, you go to the tax map and it's not, or the other way around. That's what I wanted clarified, is where is the aquifer and where is it not?
Yeah, the
And we have
tax
2 different
cards-
answers.
That's something that with this information, you should be able to sort that out. I didn't go to the extent
really
of
could.
the tax cards themselves.
With those smaller ones now,
All right, well, I haven't seen the smaller ones, so.
we could literally, over a series of a month, do that exact thing.
Okay.
Let's give you an example. And this was the only one I've done so far because I wanted to make sure that.
Oh, this is fine.
See, that's-
This shows the lots.
It does.
Yeah, all right. I thought you meant it was showing like U10.
No.
No, okay.
No.
It's got all the
It
parcels.
just doesn't have all those individual lots.
No, that's fine. I could figure it out from this.
Right.
And then that shows you graphically where the aquifer is.
And that doesn't mean that you couldn't have one like that, that there's no reason why you have a little project to actually hand write in the lot numbers for you.
No,
I mean,
but
if
this
you tell
is
something
fine
like-
because I can take this, pick out any lot and know.
That was the goal, Richard.
You've got
Dan and I were
Yeah,
talking
no,
about
this is
So
fine.
you could go right to like R40.
I thought you meant that it was just showing like R42 and nothing else. All right, no, that's fine.
The big map only,
Okay,
the big map shows the parcels and not the
okay.
tax map.
No, this is great.
So the parcels are here, the parcels are there, and then also the tax map outlines are on there. They're just
That's
not on.
plenty.
Yeah.
So I think
Those
we've
are the
got,
ones you're gonna want to carry, right?
Yeah, because when I go out,
That binder so that you
yeah, when I go out, people argue that they're not in the aquifer,
can, exactly.
because they don't want to be, because elevation is septic.
And their argument is better if they show you a tax card and it says that it is not.
Right.
So the one thing I will say that when this outline was placed on the map, first on this one and then on the smaller ones, there were a couple of places where there were some slight modifications in where that line is, just because it made sense for it to fall in a certain way, and it was still correct with respect to where the aquifer was. the last map that was done, it was a little more, it wasn't as precise. So this is more precise. And there may be some places, and I did make note in my little report here where those places were, but I can specifically circle those in case you want to refer to that and look at the tax card itself and see if that's changed. But there are very few places where that would have happened. It would have been a couple of places over here, and then mostly to the west of Great Pond.
And I'm assuming this will be available in electronic form, so
Yeah.
on our
Oh, yeah.
iPads. And
Yeah, in fact, I sent it around.
Yeah, that was for all the planning board members at the meeting in January this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that entire selection of stuff.
And the plan is when all this is done, I'll provide one of these large copies that will also be laminated, so it's gonna hold up. One of the papers is gonna hold up very long. So you can make multiple copies of this size, maybe not downstairs, but at least at your local,
Right.
copy place. But there'll be one that'll be laminated, so it'll really hold up. You can, use a Sharpie on it, or, at least a dry erase marker.
Dry erase. No Sharpie.
And then the smaller maps can go up, one set will also be laminated, but then anything else you wanna do, here I can
I'm gonna ask you now how much it would be to have 2 laminated big and 2 laminated small. Because we're gonna want one in the planning board office, and you're gonna want one down in the selectman's office.
Yep.
So if you could
Okay.
tell us what that cost would be, that would be great.
So, I think they've done a great job. The blues were really hard. One, you couldn't see anything through them. And two, the blues were so close that you couldn't really tell what was what.
That was really different.
So, this is way better in that respect. But my question comes from, how did we delineate zone A's and B's? Because what I'm seeing is, why isn't like everything in this color one zone, and everything in the dark yellow another zone, and everything in the orange a third zone? Why do we have this mark, and why do we delineate this zone A and that zone B rather than going by the colors? Because I think we're gonna get that question,
Right.
and I don't understand myself.
No, that's fine. So back, I keep referring back to 2013-14. So that was based on the U.S. Geological Survey report that was done by in 2000, maybe late 90s, early 2000s. And they did, because Kingston has such valuable groundwater resources, one of the things they did was to do a numerical model of what kind of pumping rate and volume of water that could be pumped out of a certain area. And they delineated a zone that would contribute to those high yield wells. So let's just say this area here, because it's got, basically what this translates to, this yellow and orange zone is thick, saturated material that has a lot of pore space in it. So you can imagine you could suck a lot of water out of it. So a well located there, and perhaps in this area, they had put a couple of pumping zones, modeled the long-term capacity of that, and then delineated an area that would be drawn from in order to supply those, so the recharge areas.
So thinking of it maybe in a watershed sense,
Yeah.
it's the area contributing to where the high yield is.
So I get that now, and that makes a lot of sense to me. But my next question is going to be, okay, so I own this lot right here on this side of Danville Road in Lot A. So I can't do all this with my house. But the guy across the street has the same thing and the same everything, but he has fewer restrictions. So I think that's where because they're going to say this is all the same watershed area because it's all this color. Why is Zone B have different? Why can the guy across the street do stuff with his property that I can't do with mine?
But isn't there very few things that is very much between zone A and zone B.
The biggest difference that I recall, and I have to go back and
Some of the,
go back to
like
this,
gas
is the
stations.
concentration
Yeah,
of nitrate that would be available at the boundary, and that would apply to any development that would be, larger than a certain
bigger
number.
than a certain gallons per minute on the septic and all that, yeah.
It's probably not gonna have an effect on like a residential property.
That's
It would
what I
be-
mean.
it would
It's
be
mainly
more like
gonna
a
be
commercial
commercial.
industrial use.
Okay, but you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I do.
So I think what we can do that would, probably help with this is maybe just try to make, a short and sweet description of what zone B
Yeah.
means. And I think I may have tried to do that in the earlier report, but it probably could be simplified. So it would make it a little clearer.
It's definitely in the earlier report because I read it not too long ago.
Right, but, it wouldn't hurt to have that handy, so that people could see, oh, okay, I get this, or even if they don't get it, at least the logic is there, and, people a lot smarter than me came up with that information, so we're trusting that their information is correct, and, they did the modeling. We're just kind of applying that information that was provided to help protect your resource.
And again, that was done by USGS.
So it looks to me, as I'm just sort of glancing at the zoning, that the prohibited uses are prohibited whether it's zone A or B. They're all the same.
Correct.
So that doesn't matter. And the permitted uses are the same thing. And the conditional uses are the same thing. So it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of difference except for lot coverage. And,
The septic,
well, septic in
Something
the,
about the septic, the gallons per day.
well, septic here in the aquifer just simply says they'll conform to the subsurface disposal system rules and regulations of the Board of Health.
But there's a difference in there based on zone A and zone B, because that's what Summit ran into, is the different
Okay.
classifications.
But, so I think they're pretty similar in what they
Yeah, I
allow
do
and
too.
don't
I
allow
don't-
anyway, so.
I don't think we're gonna have many arguments saying, well, why am I in zone A or B?
Yeah.
Because it's such a
So
little
zone A
difference.
versus zone B, it's really kind of, a lot of it anyway is driven by, what kind of, impact the septic system might have. And so, and your measure of that's been used because it's pretty straightforward to measure, and it's based on drinking water guidelines, is the nitrate concentration. And you either have to have, a much lower concentration of septic systems, less discharge, or you have to have a more sophisticated treatment process that would bring that concentration below.
Similar to what they did up, similar to what they did up the street at the assisted living. Okay.
Or, the septic systems, or,
Excuse me.
the more sophisticated systems that are proposed for 266. So, anyway, so that's really what would be most affected by the zoning versus zoning.
And Dana, did you say you're gonna be able to make the, lines a little, for the difference in the lines between zone A and zone B, a little more noticeable, a little bolder or
Bolder?
something?
Yeah.
Cool.
So, older lines, two laminated
Sets.
versions. And then on the smaller maps, the tax map boundaries.
Right.
Thank you for doing all of this. I think it's much clearer.
It's a lot
It is.
clearer.
And then just a, a brief summary of what zone A is. I'm gonna make sure there's nothing else that I want to mention.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Big improvement. Should be much more usable
Definitely.
for folks. Any questions for Dana?
I've never seen Richard this excited about, I haven't seen you this excited about a map, so it's.
Well,
I can understand why, but
it's just that I get into this argument almost daily with somebody because they don't want to be in the aquifer.
Just for the record, I'm not in the aquifer, Rich.
You are now because you built the lake.
Agricultural pond.
He's just created a wetland, that's all.
I know, I'm such an advocate for wetlands, I created an additional
Just an
one.
extra copy.
Yeah, we'll hang on to it
Okay,
if you're good with that and you don't need it, we'll be happy to take it.
Great.
So, Dana, before you proceed with getting lamination of those things, you probably want an estimate, right, Ellen? Cost?
She can send it to me, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just go to Staples or wherever I get to laminate it to give me a cost. And I'll let you know.
Yeah, so just if you're gonna have one done, have two done, and just tell us. And
Just don't put
we're gonna need the two, so I
Oh, yeah.
don't think that's,
You at least need two
Yep,
that's
at
what I'm
least.
saying, so.
One for up here and one for
downstairs, yeah.
I have one technical question, and that is how do we incorporate this into our regs so that, because right now we have the blue, rather vague maps, and how do we make sure that this is incorporated into the regs? It doesn't, I mean, I'm sure we can vote.
Well, actually, it's in the ordinance,
It's already in there.
which means that if we want to change that, we have to bring that before the voters.
Well, we're not changing the zone.
We're not, we're just changing the look of the,
Yeah, we're changing the.
Cosmetic.
We're not
We
changing.
haven't moved any of the property
Right.
boundaries that was.
and more importantly, we haven't moved the boundaries of the aquifer.
Correct.
Right,
Which
yes.
is the important piece.
That's essentially the entire issue,
Right.
Right.
is if the zoning ordinance would be impacted because this differs from it. That wasn't the point.
So we should be able to
So we
replace the
just pull
current
this page
stuff
out and put the new page in.
with the new stuff, exactly.
Yeah. We need better graphic representation of the ordinance. This is,
Unless there's something in there that refers to blue.
No, and
In
I'm
which
just
case
looking to
we
see,
have
because
to-
this isn't dated or titled or anything, so there's no
No,
name
Yeah,
that
Dana,
it
did
would
any
point
of the
you
lines
to.
move on that?
Well, like I said, the green dash line of where the zone A is, I refined it a little bit because at this given scale, the scale of that map that was done several years ago. I mean, if you, one line could be like 30 feet wide. And so it wasn't always as exact as it would be, so I just made it more true to the actual aquifer boundary.
But I don't think it's gonna be an issue, anybody arguing that I'm in zone A or zone B.
Yeah, no, I just wanna make sure that, like, the actual for itself didn't expand or contract.
Right, no.
Because I think that's where we were going.
And she
Right.
used the same USGS study that our previous, that we used previously to determine A and B.
So the only thing in here I see is there's reference to a study entitled The Geohydrology and Water Quality of Stratified Drift Aquifers in Exeter, Lamprey, and Oyster River.
Right, that's the USGS.
From 1990, that's the, and then there's another mention of, I don't even know how to say that, Stockwell and Flanagan from
Yeah.
1992.
The issue is.
So
the
that's
town is
still the
split
same
by-
information that's represented.
That's correct.
I don't know why that would be a problem.
Dan, I just wanna, there's something that Peter has pointed out to me about how his land is represented. So I just wanna look at that and can I talk with you about that after I've done that?
So what I think we wanna do then is we have this newer, better color and representation is to replace what's in your ordinance, or in your maps with this one. The problem is, you may be too busy with all those little tiny lot lines on it.
couldn't we put in the
for that
six?
scale.
Couldn't we put in instead of trying to put that in, put in the small ones with
the six.
pages or whatever it is?
I would think you'd put the small ones just in the map section on the website. in the planning board, so somebody's
But
looking?
in the ordinance book, wouldn't you want the 6 pages in?
Yeah,
That's all I'm saying, it's like, doesn't matter whether it's 1 page or 6. I mean,
ordinance
we
book, and then
still-
I
we
think
can
I put
still
it,
put a small version of the large map in,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
then put the 6 right behind it.
Yeah.
There's no reason not to put in more information,
Right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
and then I would just, put them on the website as their own
Of course.
place, so people can see them.
Well, it would be on the website anyway, because now it would be in the ordinance, all those pages, so.
Just if you would, just look at the way that this is titled and make sure that this title is right for use, for that use. You know what I'm saying? So should we put the ordinance number or anything else on here?
We don't in the book now, we just have it at the end of the aquifer, but.
It,
do
I
you
would,
guys- do you
it
guys
probably
want
makes sense
pages?
to have a date as well on it, just
Yeah,
for historical purposes if we're looking back.
Yeah, updated
good suggestion.
January or February 2nd.
Yeah, or effective date or something.
Yeah.
Do you guys need page numbers or anything?
I don't think so,
Good.
because you'll have new pages.
I'm happy with, good.
You have to renumber everything again.
No, because it's at the end
There's
of the
at the end.
aquifer, so it doesn't.
Yeah, oh, I see, the current map does not have a page number on it,
No, it comes right at the end of
and I,
the ordinance.
and you have to
Unpaged.
go to the index.
Yeah, so it goes from 201 to.
Oh, it is at the end, okay.
I mean, you could, no, well,
No.
no.
I mean, you
It doesn't-
could, we stop
Oh,
at
you
201 dash up, we could do 201 dash 13.
That's what I'm saying, it's not a big
Or it could be
deal.
referred to as an appendix.
If you want to.
Add-
Insert.
add
And
those
it
page
doesn't
numbers
throw
to
off
index.
No, because then the next
No.
section
That's
starts.
the next
at-
section.
Several states in the index over the
I'm a
last
fan of
few
page
years.
numbers.
Okay.
The index hadn't been kept up
Page
with the
numbers then,
changes.
do you need to put them on? Will you just send me the document and I can,
If you give me the page numbers, I can do one version with the page numbers. 'Cause
Okay.
all I have to do is, use my little
yeah,
PDF program.
okay.
Insert text here.
That's not too high tech. It's one step beyond
I
scribing.
work with a tape recorder.
Well, when you went like this, I wasn't sure where that could be typewriter.
No, no,
could
no.
be-
It's my Remington ring.
Oh,
Highly
text box.
sophisticated, I shouldn't have said that. Very difficult. I'll go through it.
all right.
Yeah, that was way too late for that one.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not in tomorrow, but I'll send them to you Thursday.
Oh, you're not, are you really leaving? Do you think you're leaving?
Uh-oh.
Shouldn't she be?
I'd really like you not to leave.
Uh-oh.
For which discussion do you want her here?
For the one from Attorney Wallace.
Ah, I thought maybe.
Oh,
Okay, we can, we can pull that up.
Shoot from the hip, exactly.
We can pull that up, because we're going back to correspondence now, so.
Could we do that while she's here? It makes a bold statement of that, in that letter.
Yes, I know.
And I really want to make sure that his bold statement is true.
Okay, so are we done with the aquifer map for now?
Yes.
All right,
yes,
thank you, Dana.
Thank you so much for making them so clear for everybody. Everybody seems happy, which is very nice. Thank you.
Well, we're gonna, yeah, yes, yes.
Why do you just keep saying yes?
Because.
This looks like legal.
Yes.
Well, it's
It
from
is a
lawyers.
huge
But
group.
non-public.
Over what it was.
No,
Don't mess with me.
I don't think so, because it's a request for,
Once the page numbers are on there, it's fine.
Yeah, that is done. I don't want to hear it.
Cannot be undone.
all right, so, I suppose I should read this, because Dana probably hasn't had the benefit of seeing this.
I would love you to do that.
Oh, good lord.
All right. The board received this by email. Whether you've had a chance to read it, I don't know, but it's from the attorneys representing the applicant for 266 Route 125. And it's dated January 31st. It's from Gottesman and Hollis, attorneys at law. and specifically Morgan Hollis. And it's addressed to us here at the board. And it reads this way. Since the vote taken by the planning board on the above captioned matter, taken on February 16, 2021, my client has been working diligently on satisfying the conditions of approval set forth in the draft which Glenn Greenwood forwarded to me on March 25, 2021, which by vote of the board must be completed by February 16, 2022. That's the satisfying of the conditions of the approval. Yes. Is set, that deadline date is coming up February 16th of this year. However, several of these conditions are dependent upon the decisions of the State of New Hampshire Department of Transportation as to the driveway permit and the State of New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services as to the alteration of terrain permit, number 2 and number 3 of the conditions. We have received preliminary decisions from both agencies on the applications. However, we are still waiting final approvals. The remaining decisions as to permits being issued will affect satisfying several of the other conditions of approval, such as subsurface system bureau permits. That's number 3 of the conditions. My client has moved forward and completed the necessary work with the town's hydrogeologic consultant, presumably you. If it's somebody else, please say so.
It is not. I read that personally as
to create a long-term monitoring plan, parentheses number 4, I guess that's condition number 4, and has satisfied all mitigation requirements imposed by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for filling the wetland by paying the mitigation fee, condition number 9. Unfortunately, due in part to the pandemic and State of New Hampshire employees working remotely and apparently being understaffed and overburdened, despite significant efforts by my client's consultants to move the 2 critical state approvals forward, it appears the time frame could continue for a significant period. My client respectfully requests that the planning board grant a further waiver and extension of time frame set forth under the above cited regulations for conditions of approval for both the site plan and the subdivision plan to be satisfied no later than February 16, 2023, being 2 years from the date of the meeting. So they're asking basically for a 1-year extension. My client is aggressively attempting to obtain its necessary approvals from the State of New Hampshire to be in a position to begin development of the property, and is agreeable as a condition of waiver and extension of time frame to provide the planning board written updates on the status of satisfying the conditions of approval on a periodic basis if requested. Please present this letter of request for waiver and request for extension of time for satisfaction of conditions of approval to the planning board for its consideration at its next meeting, which is what we're doing here. Please advise me of the date of the next meeting where this matter will be considered if you would like our attendance so that I may attend and answer questions the board may have at that time. Thank you for your consideration and assistance. Yours truly, Gottesman and Hollis, PA, and it's signed by Morgan A. Hollis.
So they're asking for a year on the time, but what was the waiver?
Well, that's going to need to be explained, but
okay.
Is Morgan he or she? He, thank you. Was he notified that we were going to discuss this tonight?
No, because he sent that out after I had left yesterday.
And it also says
If we need to.
if you need.
Okay, all right. So now somebody should explain. I mean, I could read it here from our regs, but
Yeah, the waiver is.
the waiver
process
request, which Ellen explained to me earlier, and I wasn't even aware of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's.
We have it right here, Glenn.
We have it here.
Okay.
All right. It's 904.17. It's, the title of the section is conditional approval.
Is that the one you're talking about, Glenn?
Yes.
And so it says the planning board may grant conditional approval, blah, 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 okay, which we did, we granted conditional approval. All conditions described in the motion grant approval must be met within 90 days unless more time is granted, and we granted them more time, we granted them a year. And the applicant has applied for and the board has approved a request to extend the time limit for a specified period of time not to exceed 45 days. The applicant may apply for one 45-day extension. So that's, if the board is of the mind to grant the extension as they've requested it, they would also have to grant a waiver to that section of the regs, because you're only allowed to grant them a 45-day extension.
Correct. We did that.
Is that how it is?
And you're only supposed to do it once, and this will now be the second time for years, so that's why you have to, I'm not saying you shouldn't, I'm just saying that to do it right, you have to grant the waiver,
Right.
and then it gives them the extension. Yes?
Yes, and the board has the ability to do that,
Yeah,
because it's in the regulations, but it is a step that should be done.
Right, so,
But before we get to that question, I think just for Dana's purposes, we get the question answered that you were asking, which is have they worked with you?
I know that you guys went back and forth on that. And I think that you sent us something that said, you guys agreed. I couldn't find that in my emails.
Okay, why would we send that? I can let them do it right now.
Because I was sure that I'd seen it until I couldn't find it. And then I was like, damn, I need to make sure that what it's saying here is true.
It was last fall, I don't remember which month.
Yeah, I honestly, usually I can just do a Dan Truslow search and they all come up, but I could not find it.
But I guess just need to have the answer is that condition has been met, that you have, the plan has been, okay, that was.
So part of, and this is probably more than we need to worry about, but that monitoring plan includes a number of things that will happen in order for monitoring to be effective, like installation of valves. I mean, it's basically, it's all
Part of the engine
part
room.
of the building itself, so, because certain things are gonna get, damaged or destroyed during that process, or they're gonna be replaced, we agree that certain wells are gonna have to be put in, and certain things are gonna be monitored, but the plan itself is complete and agreed upon between myself and their hydrogeologist.
And then presumably Dennis Quintel, if he's the one doing the inspections on this, or unless it's you, will have that information of what the sequence of events is and the monitoring plan, so that when he's overseeing the installations, he has something from you that he can, and them, but
So Glenn, quick question on the waiver. Is that something the applicant has to request a waiver, or can we do that?
He did.
Oh, I'm sorry, they requested it right.
In that letter, they
Sorry,
requested it.
I apologize.
They requested the waiver.
Yep.
And then the extension to
Yep.
February of 2023.
Okay.
so really granting a year doesn't mean, that's basically giving the state what he thinks they need. But obviously if they can get it in 3 months,
Correct.
they'll go, it's to their advantage to get this stuff done. And I think as far as the monitoring, letting us know quarterly would be more than enough, reports, updates. Alan, did you have?
I just wondered if Dana could be allowed to go home if she wanted to.
Okay. Yeah, that was my idea. Released.
You've confirmed what we needed to know.
You're welcome to stay, but why would you?
Well, I'd love to make a motion to grant the,
Thank you, Dana.
Grant the waiver first.
So let me just say, for somebody,
Thank you, Dana, good night.
I deal with the state constantly, and a year ago, I would send them something and get an answer pretty quick. Now, it doesn't happen. And just an example is I get an issue with Foster Home, 4 or 5 months ago and said this needs immediate action. I responded immediately and still haven't gotten their answer on it. So dealing with the state's impossible now due to lack of staff and everything else. So I can understand their frustration.
Does the language under,
Have no doubt that they're being truthful.
does the language under the next block that specifies the parameters for granting a waiver cover an extension above and beyond the 45 days?
If we waive it.
That's what we're going to
This is an
waive.
extraordinary hardship.
Yeah, that's what we're going to waive. We're gonna waive the 45 days because of the extraordinary
Yeah, that's
hardship.
gonna be my first motion.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to make a motion for this, to waive Article 904.17B, Section 2, waiving the planning board's requirement of limiting only to a 45-day extension, and the extension for only 145, waive that paragraph entirely due to the extraordinary hardship based off the applicant's letter received by the planning board.
Second.
You got it!
Too close to call.
You got it.
Motion by Chris, second by Robin. Sorry, Peter.
That's all right. She's getting on it. She really is.
You gotta be right there.
That was fast.
Thank you for holding that up, Ellen.
Okay?
I can't believe I couldn't read it and I was sitting right here.
Is there further discussion on the motion? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? I'm going to abstain only because, and I don't want to vote no on it because I think it's appropriate to do it, but since I was a no vote on the application as well as the conditional use permits, I just don't feel comfortable doing a yes, so I'd like to abstain. So that's what I will do.
So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to grant the waiver and extension request based off the fact that we have waived the additional requirement in our regulations for a period of 1 year, as requested by the applicant, to February 16th, or I guess more than 1 year.
February 16th.
February 16th, 2023.
Second.
You're gonna try, Glenn. You're gonna try.
Can we just,
You see, you beat him into submission.
no, can you just wait a minute on that?
I'm
I
sorry.
need the date again anyway.
I just want to see what our meeting is.
That's what I was just doing.
I was looking at February 13th.
2024, I mean, 2023.
It would be the 21st, would be our meeting, our second meeting in February.
So you're saying it should be extended till the 21st?
I really would rather we did it on the 21st.
I think I'd extend it to the 28th of February.
Which one?
28th.
Oh, that means it would be beyond our meeting.
Yeah, and it would give us 2 meetings that month, just in case one gets postponed or something happens. 2 meetings that month to address the
So
issue.
I'm comfortable with that amendment.
You're adjusting your motion?
Yes.
And you're okay with the second? Ellen, you're okay with this? You got this?
Yep.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Mine? Motion carries. Both motions carry. So somebody will be getting back to, Ellen or Glenn will get back to the applicant and let them know.
Do you want, are you gonna contact them?
I'll
Or
do it
write a letter?
tomorrow because I know that he's not talking.
Do you want to take this as a reminder?
No, I have.
You've got-
I want to take his call.
Thank you very much.
What's that?
Thank you very much.
At least you're not saying.
Okay, we've got just a couple of more items in correspondence, and then we can move ourselves on out of it. So the next one is a question from the Historic District Commission.
And I, just to pause one second, did you answer them? You haven't, because you're giving me a blank look, so never mind.
No, you're turning back.
I just want to make sure you had, they sent a question out to like everybody, and I'm like, if you haven't gotten an answer, I'll just bring it to planning. I haven't heard back from anybody.
Oh, I have not responded to the Historic District Commission.
Okay?
Well, I'm gonna read this, and it might be that you will just need to get back to them and clarify it, but the board should know what's going on anyway. So this is from Susan Prescott, the chair of the Historic District Commission. It's an email dated January 26, 2022. And it says, I have received an application from Marlene Gillespie, it's the 1686 house,
Yes.
for review of new signage for a hair salon at the 1686 house location. And that's an activity that was approved by HDC. As I understand, I'm sorry?
And by the planning board.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
As I understand it, there are currently 2 freestanding signs on the lot, one on Main Street and one on the Scotland Road side. She is proposing changes to both signs. Here is my question. Article 303C7 states, all businesses shall be limited to 1 freestanding sign on the lot where the business is located. No signs shall be permitted for any businesses not conducted in Kingston or that are not located on the subject property. How do they have 2 signs there, question mark? And is it proper for the HDC to approve changes to both signs if they are actually only supposed to have 1? Please advise. Did the planning board approve the running of 2 separate businesses at this location? And we did.
We did, yeah, the last part we did, yeah.
But it also came to HDC.
Yeah, it did.
Anyway,
Now there's
Well, the signs were pre-ordinance, I would say.
Yeah, I'm guessing that
They didn't even want it back.
Yeah.
since 1686 probably.
I can't even anyway with all this.
They're pre-ordinance, they can exist, but can the
Right.
HDC change them?
You know, they've been there for that long, and I think the reason for the sign on Scotland Road was because when the Kingston 1686 house first opened, people would come up 125 and they'd come down Scotland Road, and then they wouldn't know they were there.
But.
Because the sign was, you know, they'd go past it and past the parking lot before they'd even see the sign, which was on Main Street.
Here's my question though, don't they just have to go to the ZBA before, and then come back to the HDC?
No, they just,
Hang on.
they just need to copy the bank's application.
Are they changing the whole sign, or are they changing?
Isn't the sign ordinance in town 1 sign per business?
Yeah.
Regardless what zone,
No, it says 1 sign
1
per property.
freestanding sign.
per business.
Per property.
I'm trying to find out what the, hang on, this is our ordinance in the town. 1 sign per the property for the business, correct? Regardless what zone. Well, no, there's only 2 businesses, but there's multiple businesses in this town that have more than 1 sign.
Oh, yeah.
So, how can you say no if everybody else is doing it?
You sound like my kids, but they're trying to find out the way to legally do it.
I don't mean to sound like a kid now. I'm trying to sound like I'm right.
But I'm just saying that, I'm not saying that they shouldn't get them, but it sounds like it's a question for the ZBA. Isn't it, if you don't meet the regulations, you have to go to the ZBA, if you can't meet the
I
ordinance?
thought the most recent, example just said you had to fill out a building permit and you can get whatever
They
you
didn't go
want.
to the ZBA.
With upward illumination.
Lit up illumination.
Still supposed to follow the ordinance. I mean, the town departments that issue permits are supposed to follow the town's rules and regs.
And the question is, if it was a
So this is,
pre-existing
Hey,
forming,
I'll tell you a prime example, Jimmy Lee, or What's the Scoop, has a sign over there, they have a sign on 125.
Tell
oh,
them to
that's a
take it
state
down.
sign.
Oh, that's a state sign.
State informational sign.
There's 2 signs though.
well,
That's a whole different animal.
but this says,
It is a different animal because it's in the state's right of way.
this says all businesses shall be limited to 1 freestanding sign on the lot where the business is located.
Business, it's not,
It says all businesses shall be limited to 1 freestanding sign on the lot where business is located.
So 2 businesses, 2 signs.
I don't think that was the intent of what was written here, but I think that's literally what it says. All businesses shall be limited to 1 freestanding sign on the lot where they're located.
And I have a question, because I wondered this just on a personal level. Couldn't they have a sign that had both businesses on 1 sign?
Don't know why not.
Well, that's a.
But does that require them to increase the size or the shape of the sign?
I don't know that. That would have to be a discussion.
They still have two occasions, Main Street. Park.
Well, because you guys have all said that those are like grandfather signs.
Yeah.
So my thing is, if you already have those one signs and you have permission for the physical sign, couldn't you just put another business on that sign?
So
I would think that would be
approval is
okay.
only required for newly installed signs, which they're not requesting, correct?
What's in the HCC?
Or expanded sign, that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. There's something
Or
for that.
expanded
That's-
signs in all zoning districts, which they're not asking
Those
for.
are business, individual
And then it
business.
says changes in language or fascia shall not require review unless the change also increases the signage, which it does not, changes in lighting, which it does not, or represents a new signage area not previously approved.
I think I was not increasing the sign.
Yeah, that,
It's already two signs.
No, but
The
we don't know
area.
the change.
Places.
We don't know what they're doing. They're probably gonna be adding
To reflect the new
perhaps more
business.
signage to reflect the new business.
What if, since we've decided it's,
From my perspective, you have two signs and you have two businesses. The issue is if they can't live within the restrictions of the existing sign size for those two sites, I don't really think there's any avenue other than the ZBA. Because they're not conforming, and you're not supposed to change the parameters of a non-conforming structure without ZBA approval.
So the signs can't be any bigger than 24 square feet, so it's a
What-
4 by 6. I mean, that's adequate to put two names of two, put
It
the
absolutely
names of
is,
two
but
businesses.
I bet that the 1686 house probably is 3/4 of that already.
Right.
what if we've decided this was probably pre-ordinance?
Correct.
And because they're changing it, they have to meet the ordinance.
Correct.
What if they change the Main Street sign only and leave the other one alone because it's pre-existing?
Well, actually, when they first came to the planning board, we kind of skirted this, and they said something about it, and we said, change the one leading into the parking lot to say the hair salon, and that way you probably don't bump up against anything. But that was just
The entrance
sort of
is back.
tough after the hearing.
If they put it on, if they ended up with a sign on Scotland Road that had both the 1686 house and the barber and
Hair salon.
the shop, hair salon, and they did not exceed the size of the sign that exists there now, I don't think we have any concern.
Except legally existing non-conforming signs may continue but may not be altered.
Yeah, and that, there's also, they could put a parking,
That is really specific.
We're also trying to make
In
a
writing?
decision.
That's
We're-
consistent with a non-conforming use.
We're trying to make a decision when we don't know the size of the sign that's
Yeah.
there,
And
or whether it's
But we do
conforming.
know that there's no way that it isn't there because it's non-conforming. And as soon as you label it non-conforming, if we're talking about changes, it's the ZBA. That's the avenue. That's the avenue. As much as we wanna say something different, that's the avenue. Are they going to get it? Of course they're going to get it.
so we're going to write back to Susan to say, because of, specifically that particular section, they need to go to the ZBA. Because it says non-conforming signs.
I think that's the only avenue they have available to them.
Tell me what page that's on.
Sure.
so
I want to pass judgment after I look at the sign that's there.
Is, do
Because
you
the
want
sign that's there is well within size-wise.
So if I,
C?
It still says that if it's a non-conforming sign, it won't be changed.
How do we know it's non-conforming from that point?
Because it doesn't meet the.
Because there are two of them.
Because
because
it's
there's two of them, and there's only,
As soon as there are two of them, it's not conforming.
But there's two
But
signs.
that was pre-signed. So I'm
Which
saying
means
they leave
it's
one
an,
alone.
it's an existing non-conforming
Right.
use. And if changes are made to a non-conforming use, or you can't make changes to the non-conforming.
non-conforming.
But it does say all businesses may have one sign on the lot. So if there's two businesses, our ordinance states, whether we like it or not, two signs.
I think no matter what, I don't think our board can grant them.
No, the question is,
I mean, our board can't grant them whether really, I think you either send them to the ZBA or they are given the opportunity to follow the same path that we're recent.
The HDC was sort of asking for guidance because they weren't sure, so.
I think we should just tell them to go to the ZBA for a variance.
I mean, the bank has 3 signs, right?
Unless they can put the
Can we not
change
talk about
of
that,
paint
please?
on the one
I
side.
think it's perfectly relevant
Well,
because.
the bank has 3
But
signs
that's gonna open up.
well, let me tell you the difference. The
that were
difference
all
is-
existing, and they are the same size.
That's not what I'm gonna say. What I'm gonna say is, these people, because they're in the HDC, are going to the HDC to get approval as they need to for the HDC. What the building inspector did and what the HDC committee does, you can have an issue with the building inspector if you want to, but you can't say to the HDC, we don't think the building inspector did the right thing, but do what he did. I mean, that's not really helpful to a commission who's trying to ask for guidance.
First,
I'm not,
But I look at it from that, so say they go to the ZBA and they're denied. How conflicting is that? And
Yeah,
an
but
issue for
I
the
mean,
town?
everybody else is doing it, is it
Yeah.
really a?
I know.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that that's another issue that might need to be brought up to another board, but it's not pertinent to the HDC and what information they need. I'm not disagreeing with your,
I didn't mean to cut you off, Richard, and I feel like I did.
Did he?
yeah, you did, but
I did.
I'm used to it.
And I'm apologizing right now for that.
Were you done?
Explain to me what you were saying.
Yeah.
Can we agree that Glenn will communicate, or Ellen will communicate this back to chair of the HDC, that it should
Take it up with the ZBA.
take it up with the ZBA?
We don't need a motion for that, do we? Cause I'm ready to go.
it's in the minutes.
That could be consensus of the board recommendation, yeah.
It's a recommendation back to the HDC. They don't have to follow it.
I don't need to vote it,
They
yeah.
ask for guidance, we're giving it to them. They'll do what they wanna do.
And there were several people included on this email, including Glenn, Ellen, myself, the building inspector. And I believe that I responded back suggesting that that the HDC chair speak with you, Glenn, for some guidance on this. So. But anyway.
And the ordinance does allow for directional signs like parking. So if that's what the Scotland Road sign says, they could take that part of it out, put it on a separate sign that's not subject to this.
All right. We all set on that one?
Do you want to do the minutes?
I think there's still more correspondence.
There is, a couple of things. I think we talked about this, I think I showed this at our last meeting, the issue of town and city showed up, and if you're interested, it's here. And I think I also mentioned that it's now also available online at the New Hampshire Municipal Association website, so you can go right on there and read it without having to pull this one. All right. And then this stays in our file, just, this is the lighting at the self-storage facility, and Richard, you mentioned before that that's still being worked on?
Yes.
Any other business? I have one thing that I wanted to bring up, and before, because we're not gonna meet again before there would be time to do this. The one citizen's petition that we disapproved was the one about the agricultural zoning, which I don't think it was written the way the petitioner intended.
I contacted him and it absolutely was.
Absolutely was.
Oh.
I gave him an opportunity to change it.
Oh.
After talking to the state, and he
Okay.
said no.
Oh, okay, so the way it's written, it not only allows roosters anywhere, but it allows agriculture anywhere. So you could be in a single-family residential neighborhood, and one of those lot owners could choose to have a pig farm there, and it would be perfectly allowable.
And farm worker housing,
Yeah.
that's part of that definition?
Right, so my question to you is, since we voted to disapprove it, I think based largely on the fact that it was very, very expansive that way.
Yes, you should write a letter.
Does the board want a letter to the editor written to explain that, so that folks, when they vote, they'll know what this really means?
I think so.
Definitely, yeah.
And if so, do you want me to write it? And if so, do you want me to write it as a member of the public, or do you want me to write it as planning board?
I think
I
as a
would
planning board,
prefer that you do it as the planning board,
Yeah.
because people are coming up and asking me about it.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
I would prefer it to
But
come
I
from
guess
the
because
board.
the vote wasn't unanimous, I don't want it to say that this is the unanimous feeling of the planning board.
Yeah.
I'm still so pro-agriculture that I'm gonna support it.
I thought
You can vote
It
no
was
on
not
motion.
unanimous.
it wasn't.
It was not unanimous, no.
I thought
It was 4-1.
I thought you said you didn't agree with it, but you wanted to go to the voters.
Different.
No, that was
The other,
I think
That was a,
apartment building.
yeah, that was an ADU.
Yeah.
So someone make a motion to have Glenn write a letter about it, and you can vote against it.
And I would just say, make clear in your letter that the majority of the planning board was, however you say that, according to you can't.
But it should
Just
definitely,
don't say unanimous, because it was not unanimous.
right.
well, the point is that
The board
the
voted.
board voted.
Right.
But because that's for what goes on the ballot, you're asking for something different now.
Yep.
So we had also talked about having some sort of explanatory text available at the time of voting that explain, who writes that?
Glenn didn't write an explanatory text, he wrote language instead of the,
Reduced language so that the ballot can be showed up.
Okay.
But you're saying we talked about having material available at the polling place.
Like if you vote yes, this is what you're voting for. If you vote no, this is what you're voting
Actually, I
for.
don't think we can do that anymore.
No,
you know, I had no problem with the board putting something out that actually had something that people could bring into the ballot box with them. Instead of, we have to have it posted, because I looked into it, and that in itself is not advocating one way or another, it's just putting out the language and making multiple copies so people can bring it into the ballot if they want to. If the board's gonna start putting out a specific thing as to why they did or did not vote something, or to, I'm gonna have to call the Secretary of State, because that gets into a different.
No, and I was inquiring about just some expanded language separate from the condensed language on the ballot to explain what's on there. Not who voted what, not opinions, just a yes vote means reverting back to this, a no vote means,
We talked about that.
we did talk about it, right?
Well, you could actually say that in this letter. Some form of
Voted on the
what it
small
means, a
language
yes
of the
vote means
warrant.
this, and a
We
will
didn't
means
vote on,
that. Yeah.
it basically,
Nothing says if Glenn puts a letter in the paper, we can't have copies of that letter,
Right.
right?
I make a motion that Glenn, representing the planning board as chair, write a letter to the editor. I don't know what the article was, but
Explaining the article, which,
explaining the citizens petition, right, warrant article 10.
whatever the number is that deals with the agricultural zoning.
Second.
I can check right here.
do we think by not putting the number in, we'll be confused as to which one he's writing about?
Oh, it's number 11.
Okay. Well, I want to mention mention the article because,
Oh, no, you can, but the motion doesn't.
so there's a motion and a
Second, already.
second by Richard. Yeah, I know.
I guess I'm for the animals too, to be honest with you. I'm trying to dogs and horses and cows and everything else, I don't care.
Well, I was
So
just,
you understand that this vote would eliminate single-family residential?
It would
Turn it-
eliminate?
It would eliminate single-family, the result of this vote,
It's
if
not
this,
gonna eliminate, it's gonna allow it to be there.
it would change it to single-family residential agricultural.
so if you live in a
It's not gonna eliminate
quarter
the
acre
zone.
lot in Great Palm Park,
Eliminate the
you
zone,
can
it
have
would change the
cows.
zone to single-family residential agriculture, and would allow, agritourism, employees' quarters, pig farms, animal husbandry of all kinds, and sewage. It would allow sewage application to the soils that's currently not allowed. So just think about that. It's what it's eliminating. It's eliminating all those people who bought single-family residential who thought they were getting protected from being next to a pig farm and having septic applied to their soils would lose that protection.
Well, it's also one thing,
Unlike presidential, that's single-family agriculture now.
well, I mean, but it's all like, if you're on a 2 acre lot or a 3 acre lot, that's one thing. If you're on a 1/10 of an acre in Great Palm Park, it still applies to them.
Yep.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm finding when people come up and ask, and all of a sudden it's like Ellington, you come downstairs. It's, everybody's asking about the rooster ordinance. So they think,
They think it's a free rooster, and it says on that petition, hopefully that won't appear on the ordinance.
and then when I will refer to the planning board minutes, and some of the things that was said, that some people said it was poorly written. It then allows pig farms, and it was like, I don't mind a rooster, but I don't want pigs. I'm like, it was just, I said a lot of the board members who voted against it are not opposed to roosters, but it was a poorly written ordinance. And it allows more than,
It's a backdoor. They're using this rooster thing to get rid of a zoning ordinance.
so.
Okay,
All right.
and when I write it, I will find some way to word it that hopefully will satisfy your concerns, Chris. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? So all in favor with the, well, no, not all in favor.
6-1.
6 in favor,
Chris Basher.
1 opposed, no abstentions.
Erica Saucione said she sent something in. Ellen, Erica Saucione said she sent in a,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Erica Saucione said she sent in a letter explaining.
What?
No, she got back to us to describe what her intent was,
Yeah,
and it's much less than what we were fearing. 4 classes a day, 8 people a class.
Oh, at Newton Junction Road.
Yes.
Yeah, this is
Yoga facility.
real.
So I'll send you her email, Richard, so that you can see how she looks here.
so do we need to take action on that? Is my
Well,
question.
the question is, when we get a letter like that, we have to decide if it needs further review.
Right, could we condition it upon
I thought we did.
septic
That we-
inspector?
I thought we conditioned it based on the septic system.
Yeah, you and Dennis were gonna review it. That's why I suggested to her she contact the health officer, since that was the main.
Well, the letter may be enough. I mean, depending on the number of classes was the big thing.
It's very reduced, it's way,
I mean, like 1 a day?
No, it was 4 classes a day, I think. But the classes have very few people in them.
We have 4 classes a day, 8 people to a class, and she said an hour to an hour and 15 minutes between classes.
So the issue of the overlap of it shouldn't be an issue.
She said most of the hours of operation were due to the retail aspects,
Right.
rather than the class aspects.
Retail being,
She's gonna sell candles and
Yoga mats,
yoga mats.
Okay.
you know.
accoutrements.
Holistic accoutrements. yeah.
Well, however you want to do it, if you want to conditionally approve it based on septic, I don't know, I mean, I'm gonna sit down with Dennis and go.
I think that would be appropriate. It's the only issue we have.
So, I have right now, no further conditional review is required pending septic system approval. Is that where you guys are headed?
And we just said there's enough parking for everybody there.
Yeah, yeah.
So is Dennis going to look at that?
Yeah, we've already looked at it once, and they basically put as much septic in there and people as they could based on the lot, so.
They did do a
We've gotta
roadside
just see
system.
if this comes within that.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I would second the conditional approval based on this.
Yeah, I have, no further condition, that should just be review. No further review required pending
Yeah.
septic system approval.
That was Robin's motion.
Yes, and Peter
And
second.
Peter second.
Yes, that's
Peter
correct.
Coffins, second. Discussion. Favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention?
Me.
One abstention. So 6 in favor, none opposed, 1 abstention. Richard.
And I did mention your concern to her that she double checked that the septic would be enough to take care of her cafe if she wanted to in the future, rather than find out after the fact, but she was fine with everything as it stood, so I did mention it to her.
I have a fieldstone question that I don't think takes board action, but I want to make sure they're asking for an amended septic plan. I don't really know why, but
Amended in what way? Larger, smaller, different design?
I mean, as-built, right?
well, no, they haven't put it in. A little different design in how they're going to do it, but the system itself is in the same place.
Footprint's the same?
Footprint's the same. The pipe going from the building to the thing. Okay, I didn't think so. I just want to make sure.
I mean, if it was gonna be in a different spot or a different configuration, different.
If it is a different spot, it'll only be about 2 feet or something, so it's not gonna be a major move. But they also turned in a plan last week and didn't turn in a fee for rechecking it, so I haven't opened it until they turn in a fee.
While you have the mic, anything else?
Yeah, we probably will have a code enforcement agent by the end of the week.
Good.
Good.
The guy that we,
The one you told us about last time?
guy we talked to is gonna take it, and we got a couple of steps for him to take, but if nothing goes wrong, he's gonna take it.
Start time?
So don't chase him up right away.
Yeah, okay. Starting sometime in February or March?
Probably immediately, because he's ready to jump in.
Well, it's not one sitting around this table that's gonna chase it away.
Motion to approve the January 4th minutes?
Oh,
Second.
forgot all about that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I just
Motion
checked
and a
my
second
agenda.
to approve January 4 minutes as written. Discussion? Favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Looks unanimous. Did I forget anything else, Lynn?
No, I just happened to check my agenda again and saw
Well,
that.
yeah.
Glenn, just one thing I was talking to Glenn about this, is with that map, I was looking at that map, some of those property lines aren't correct, for one thing, so that's not an overlay of our tax map, because that's not the tax map, first of all. Second of all, she only numbered certain areas, like certain tax for like R30, and like, we're missing like U11, there's a bunch of stuff missing on that map, so I don't know how, if somebody's gonna come in and try to look at their piece as an overlay, first of all, it doesn't dictate all of our zones, only a couple of them. Second of all, some of those properties aren't the same as what, on the tax map, so I don't know where they got that from, but that's not our tax
I
map.
assume they got that from RPC. Did they not, or do you think?
Granite GIS.
That doesn't match the tax map.
I mean, some of our tax maps are ridiculously wrong.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
all, I mean, the ones we have
Especially
right
when you
now
get
on
into
file,
grading line.
electronically in the town, you go to the town website, that doesn't match. So I don't know where they got that.
And Peter, she did mention, and I don't know if that's what you're referring to, but she did mention that if there were tax maps that didn't have any aquifer on them, she didn't put them
Oh,
on.
no, no, they're on there.
Oh.
Yeah, they're on there. A few of them I'm quite familiar with, are completely not right. And like I said, it's just, we're gonna use that as somebody to get out and look at it.
Yeah.
You know, you wanna, well, that's where I'm supposed to live, but that's not my line. Or what zone, because only some of those zones are on there, not all.
Well, would you make sure that
And
Glenn
that's what we're talking about.
knows about it, so that,
That's why I wanted to talk.
Great Pond and tax maps are ridiculous. They show roads that aren't there and roads that aren't there.
I know what you're saying.
other business?
Just said I handed out the calendar. If anyone has any questions or doesn't like it or whatever.
If they don't like it, then
Talk
too
about
bad.
it next time. But it pretty much just follows what we've done in the past.
Folks, take a look at it. If we need to adjust it, we can discuss it at the next meeting. Anything else? Burning issues?
Motion to adjourn?
So we have a motion, and I was just gonna say that at our next meeting, we have one public hearing scheduled, which is the continuation of Aloha overhead doors. We've done a site walk on it. I sent the minutes, and Ellen distributed them out to folks. And so we should be prepared to deal with that one pretty well, I would imagine, at that meeting. So, okay, so motion.
To adjourn.
Second.
Robin, second.
You looked at her.
Alex, right? Here we go. We're adjourned.